Welcome back, everyone, for our final recaps for SGSN's Survivor Exile Island. This is a dual show where we are going to be doing episodes 12, 13, and the finale. I'm your host, Alex Trias, and I'm back again with Jeremy and McKenna. What do you guys think? We're at the end, baby.
So sad. I love this cast. They were such a joy, such game players. They were here to play the game fully, and it showed. There were no people who were kind of like duds on the season. So
Yeah, I thought it was a really great group of castaways for SGSN's first long game. And so, yeah, there was never really like a dull moment throughout the entire season. So kudos to all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go any further, we're going to be emphasizing this throughout the entire podcast, but a big congratulations to everyone that was involved in this season. It was our first long game that we've created. Ian and Morgan put so much effort into this as our hosts for the long games, and I really think this first season was a big success. We are going to see more long games in the future, but we had to talk about these final six. So we're going to start with episode 12. And instead of going to the nitty-gritty, we are going to go broad strokes here. There's a lot to cover. So if we miss stuff, hit it in the comments. We always love a good conversation. So episode 12 starts. We are now, John's officially out of the game.
again,
And we go straight into the immunity challenge. Ping pong paddles, dice on the handles of the ping pong paddles. And we get a winner for the third time this season in Mike Simmons.
challenge beast. What more can you say?
Yeah, I feel like at this point he can't be stopped. And so he's really a big front runner going into this final stretch of the game.
I mean, currently our record for challenge wins is Jackie in Lalumanu Beach at 4. So he tied it.
Yeah, he definitely tied it this season. He had a 3-round break from winning immunity, but he's back at it again. So we're going into this vote, and really the crux of this is twofold. It's who's going to go, Jim or Austin, and how does Greg go about using his advantage, the safety without power. And you see that he's questioning about it. Like, should I play it on myself and just secure my spot for final 5? Or should I potentially use it to maybe even save Jim and make sure my agenda of getting Austin out happens? And when you're in a quick round, because this was essentially made as a mini round, because immediately after the elimination, they were put in scramble rooms where they could strategize for 20 minutes. They were doing confessionals in between, and went straight from tribal from there. So it was a very quick process for you to figure out a strategy where normally for these long game players, you had at least a day to figure it out. So what are your guys' thoughts on Greg's decision?
I kind of think that he made the right move at the end of the episode, just to secure his own safety, especially when it's that quick of a round and you don't have a lot of time to really kind of just think about all the different scenarios. You have to just say screw it and save yourself.
100%. I agree with Jeremy. And the fact of like Lilly telling Greg, like, use it on yourself or you're going home. Like there was no wiggle room for that advantage. And this late in the game, I feel, yes, you want to try and make moves to get yourself as close to the end, but you can't do that if you're not there yourself. So if you have an advantage at 6-5, for sure, use it on yourself.
Right. And you see, it is the right move ultimately. I make wikis for our seasons. Originally, I put his decision as an NA because with safety without power, you don't truly know what would have happened if they were to have stayed, but you could make a pretty clear indication based off conversations that were being had by Mike and with Alex was it. If he doesn't use it on himself, we're sending him home. Like, we're not going to send out Jim or send out Austin. They're still beneficial to us. But because Greg is going out and wants us to take out Austin, we have more incentive to take out Jim.
And Greg thought he and Lilly could maybe pull Jim over, but Jim's targets were John, Lauren, and Greg. Like John and Lauren are gone. Greg is now the top of the list. So there was no swaying him. And without that Jim vote, I don't see Greg surviving that if he doesn't play it on himself.
Yeah, ultimately, we're seeing the downfall of Greg's game, which was a very fantastic game.
Oh.
The issue was the game that he created for himself was so good that it eventually took out all of the people that were blocking his game. Mm-hmm. And suddenly, when you are sending out the big players and all of them are going out saying, Greg, you're playing the best game. Greg's getting handed the win now. It's like, there's nowhere for you to hide. You're with a challenge beast in Mike Simmons, and you have a lot of people who don't want to go to the end with you, except maybe Lilly. And it is ultimately, he does use the safety without power, but Jim gets taken out majorly because Mike and Alex found more value in knowing Austin would want to go after Greg. Yep. And so, unfortunately, Jim is the one who takes the boot for this episode, and he leaves with the most votes cast against this season with 13 votes.
Wow.
So, say what you want about Jim, but he was a survivor in this game, surviving a lot of rounds where his name was in a lot of people's mouths.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big Jim fan. At first, I was like, I don't think he knows what's going on, what he's doing, but he started to catch up to things and like the speed of the game where like maybe his social relationships were a little bit lacking, but he just, every time he came on screen, I just smiled. I love watching Jim, and I could have him on another season for sure. I think he's great.
Yeah, I definitely love Jim's personality. He definitely brings just a lot of, like, I would say, like fresh air to the game, I guess I would say. It's just always something just really positive, and you can always tell that his mind is always running about the game, which is also really cool. So I'd love to see him back.
Yeah, Jim was definitely a fun person to have in this game. It was a different person to have in this game. And it's all about having that diverse cast. And I definitely think he had a different view set than others. And maybe it didn't come across as much on screen, but I do believe he was a good player and had good ideas.
Just nobody would listen.
It's just he didn't have the capital to get people to buy into his ideas and use it for themselves. But he goes out as our sixth boot, or our sixth place. And great place to end up for someone who was an alternate on the season.
Yeah, for sure. Survivor Ninja Jim.
Survivor Ninja Jim. Keep rocking on. But that moves us to episode 13, which was a double boot episode. We got our final 5 and final 4. We'll start with final 5. And we start with a challenge. And it's a challenge created by the host to my right now, and that's Jeremy. It's Jeremy's challenge, and I'll let Jeremy explain it.
Yeah, so with this challenge, contestants have to stack solo cups while rolling a dice from 1 to 6, and every time they hit the right number, then they add another solo cup onto the very bottom. It's a very tough challenge that I created back in February. I loved seeing it play in action. It caught a lot of people off guard, which was a lot of fun to see. And yeah, I can't thank Ian and Morgan and all production enough to put it on the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a production favorite. When you came up with that for Lalu Manu, we all were just, wait, is this possible? And then I was actually testing this out. I was like, this is doable. And then we just went with it. It's one of those, like, you might be here for a minute, but it'll be able to be done. So it's definitely one of our favorite challenges. So if you ever want to be cast on one of our seasons, definitely prep Jeremy's challenge, because who knows when it'll pop up.
Yeah, and everyone I would assume would have thought Mike Simmons would win this as well. But twist with final five of Glam, a 4-person alliance that's 4 strong on paper, and an outsider in Austin. So, just like in Real Survivor, Austin wins immunity, safe at Tribal Council, guaranteed a spot at the Final Four. It's the first time where Glam legitimately has to eat each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if I were Greg, I feel like I should have tried to make something happen a little bit earlier, because you had the tight alliance of Alex, Simmons, and Lilly, who had been together the entire time, where Greg was, yes, a very useful like ally, and they probably made him feel super comfortable in the alliance. But there's also just that, like, we've been together for X amount of more days than you, so we're just gonna stick here, and your giant target, like, that didn't help either.
And it's sort of a ironic twist to his words in confessional to John a few rounds back, where he was saying, I know that you are targeting me because I've let my alliance members tell you that they're targeting me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you allow your members to fake go after you, it suddenly gives them the idea of maybe we should go after you. So while it was good gameplay in the short term to help keep control of John, ultimately I feel it did set up Greg's downfall.
Could have, yeah.
Which we get to the final 5 vote. It's a vote of 4-1, but really a 4-0 because Alex plays his idol. It's not a successful idol play, but he does negate a vote.
Yes.
But the rest of them obviously dumped their votes on Greg, and Greg graciously goes out at 5. Amazing person, amazing player. Unfortunately, the game that he played only allowed him to get to 5th place.
Yeah, I think playing with that like kind of massive target game, you kind of get this hype and then plummet. So he was playing, we saw him play this really, really great game all season. We're like, oh, Greg's going to win. But that's kind of like, sort of like your cue to be like, oh, wait, the other shoe's got to drop at some point. But I definitely think he had the best social game of the season. He had everyone believing that he was their number one, when I don't know if we really know who his number one was. I think it was probably Lilly, but we could make arguments for several people being his number one. So I think he was definitely the social player of the season.
Yeah, it definitely would have been interesting to see if he had actually won that immunity challenge, to kind of see what would have happened in the next round with Glam all together at the Final Four. But I definitely, he was the biggest social threat of the game, had the best social game, had a pretty good strategic game. And then I would say he was really good at challenges as well. So he was an all-around player. So right when he didn't have any immunity or any safety, had to get him out. So
right, ultimately it's about, you hear it in games like Big Brother, especially more in the new school thing, but it's about incentives and what drives someone to keep you around more so than sending someone out. And at this point of the game, the pitch that he would have had to give to get at least 2 of them, get Alex and or get Mike and get Lilly to keep him around, would have had to been a masterclass, the levels of Survivor gameplay to manipulate people to keep you around, even though for all their better interests, they did what they needed to do tonight, and that was send him home.
Yeah,
So
I mean, Lilly tried. She tried to keep Greg, but there were just no numbers, and like, why go against the grain? I mean, it wouldn't have meant much if she didn't vote for Greg, but why? So
Yeah, the odds were just so much stacked against Greg at that point. Like there was nothing he really could have done in that kind of situation, I think. And so because I really think that all of them, like pretty much everyone thought like if I sit next to Greg at the end, I'm not gonna win. So like why keep him?
like the only thing he could have done, and like it's little things where on paper it would be ridiculous to do what I'm about to say, but like when you watch it back, there's these little steps that happen in these boots that cascade upon each other and help determine what we ultimately see with who wins this season. And Greg's best pitch would have been to go to Mike and like just, even though you're at the end game, be like, hey, if I go out and everyone's talking about your immunity wins, if you don't win, you're gone. If I'm there and we both don't win, at worst, we're going to fire making or whatever the challenge would be. At best for you, I'm going out 3-1.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then like I don't know what you do there, because you also have the disadvantage of like Mike's not going to get rid of Austin. Austin is safe this round, and even if he wasn't, Mike still wouldn't want to take out Austin because he knows Austin would bring him to the end.
Yep.
But we lose Greg here at Final Five. He's now a member of our production team. We're lucky to have him, and we were lucky to have him on this season. But we're going to move now to Final Four, Austin's episode. Mike wins his fourth immunity at a very brutal challenge. McKenna, do you want to explain this challenge?
Oh, okay. So they have to make a pyramid of cups with only using their feet. It's like the challenge in Second Chance where they have to like stack the blocks with their feet. So we kind of did our org version. So they had to make a pyramid of cups only using their feet and then take it all down and put it back in a stack.
Mike dominated it. It's a lower ab workout of hell if you're not good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just another thing where you're just like, you're watching him win these things. And if I'm the rest of the cast, I'm like, we should have taken him out during those 3 rounds when he didn't have safety, because if there's a physical challenge, he's like 85% of the time he's going to win it.
Yeah, I think what they should have maybe done is like look over to his screen, because he actually had the best strategy for unsticking the cups together from the stack with like shoving his foot in and pulling them out that way. People were trying to like shimmy them off of the top or something like that. So I think that's where the other castaways went wrong with this challenge and Mike went right. So I think maybe if someone else might have done that strategy alongside Mike, it might have been a little bit closer. So but it's definitely that like lower ab workout of trying to lift your legs up to put this cup like gingerly on top of a pyramid.
Right. So we're now in a Final Four situation that give clarity to people on just like the type of games these players were playing. We go into the Final Four with Alex having 6 votes cast against him. Austin has had 4 votes cast against him. And both Lilly and Mike up to this point have not had a vote cast against them the entire game.
We also saw that in actually Jeremy's season of Yasawa Islands. Both Karen and Jeremy hadn't received a vote until Final Four, where Karen received hers. So
right. So
nuts.
We end up seeing Mike isn't sure what he wants to do, but Alex and Lilly are basically going, we need to keep the rest of Glam together. Let's all go to Final 3. We need to get rid of Austin. He's not an OG Phil. There's a lot of Alexas on that jury. We shouldn't chance it. He could easily win. He's a likable guy, all that. I think this is what cost Mike the game.
Yes.
Like, they vote out Austin 3-1 here. However, he knows if he ties it up, it's not like Mike's vulnerable.
Mhm.
At worst, it's puts him in the same spot that he ends up ultimately in.
Right.
But at best, there's a challenge and Austin beats Lilly in the challenge, and it's now a final three of Austin, Alex, and Mike.
And then both Austin and Alex are taking Mike to that final.
Yeah, and more importantly, Mike knows if he wins, he's automatically there. If Austin wins, Austin's going to take him. He may not know for sure with Alex, but he has a pretty good idea Alex would take him.
Mhm.
The only person he thinks he has is Lilly as well, so he doesn't think ultimately it will cost him, but it does.
Yeah.
But let's focus on Austin here. He goes out as our fourth boot. Second season playing with us, knowing only 3 episodes of Survivor, and he ends his career currently being a third place finisher in a mini and a fourth place finisher in a long game.
Yeah. And both times he's the last member of the jury, which sucks.
Well, not this time.
Not this time.
Oh
because
yeah,
we're
well he
home
thinks
too.
that.
Yeah, he thinks he is. Austin, I messaged this to him after I had to edit his final words once again, but he is honestly one of my favorite players we've had on SGSN. I think his social game is really good. I think it does fit better for a mini. The way he could incorporate people bouncing into in and out of rooms like seamlessly was really great. I felt like just the length of this game kind of got to him in the middle. And then all of a sudden he got this resurgence, but I think it was a little bit too late in game. But overall, I think Austin is definitely one of our best players for not seeing like any of Survivor.
Yeah, I like watching him play. I enjoyed playing with him in season 1 mini. I think he has a lot of potential, but kind of like what McKenna was saying, his game is kind of fit more geared towards the mini. You definitely kind of see like once he started to lose Zucker and John, he was just kind of like, what do I do? And so he's trying to figure that out. But unfortunately, it was too late at that point.
Yeah, Austin, a hell of a social player. We don't get a ton out of him in terms of strategy, but you do know that like he understands at least the basics of Survivor. Once he has a group, he's like, well, it makes sense to get rid of people who aren't in my group, and I feel well positioned in the group that I am in. So why change it? Why rock the boat? So it's more of like an old school sense of Survivor, which is interesting to see in this new age of Survivor that we are in, and having someone who's a recruit go towards that old school mentality. Yep. And for that, we appreciate you, Austin, 2-time player, 2-time jury member. And before we head into the finale episode, because this is a double recap episode, we do need MVPs for last week's episodes of 12 and 13. And we will start this time with McKenna.
100,000,000% Mike Simmons. The fact that Greg didn't vote for Simmons that round when Greg knew like, Mike doesn't have a vote on him yet. And Mike was like, how can I get Greg out, but also him not to vote for me? He was winning immunities and he's now where he wants to be in the final 3. I 100% give my MVP to Simmons.
Jeremy.
I also have to go with Simmons. I think he was playing an incredible game up until the very beginning of the finale. And he was a huge front runner to win this game. And I think his strategic gameplay and his social abilities were incredible alongside all of his challenge beast wins. So, yeah.
Okay. So heading into the finale episode, we have our final 3 show up we have the jury show up. But we're not quite done yet. It is not a final three, even when he lets the final three make an opening statement of sorts.
Yeah.
So cruel.
So brutal to find out. Yeah, you guys got one more challenge. For the last time. One last time. Q Hamilton.
Yeah, right?
It is. Do you know your cast members? And let me tell you, these people did not. For as great as social games as we say that these people have, in the pressure, whew.
Fallen Comrades is one of my favorite challenges because it really puts your knowledge of the jury to the test. I think it really proves kind of your social game where you can see your strategic game come out through who you're voting out, how you're voting them out, et cetera, et cetera. And then obviously the physical game is shown in the challenges and immunity wins. So I feel like this is a really great demonstration of the social game.
Yeah. I would probably say in the final three's defense, you're probably not really thinking that even if you're thinking there's not going to be another challenge, you're like that part of the game is like not even like on your mind. And so just to have that just hit you and you're like, oh crap, now I have to remember everything that I just learned for the last 39 days.
Yeah. And for me, especially, it's like, I can remember stuff that's like very prevalent. So like if you keep talking about your job, then I can remember what your job is. But if you offhandedly said like, oh yeah, I played the French horn once, like I'm probably not gonna remember that. Though
I mean, to be
unless
fair,
if you have a poster of the French horn in the background, then I'm very good at cheating like that. But
yeah, it's like it's a hard challenge. You need to be completely on the entire time. It's like in Real Survivor, which in defense of the final three, in Real Survivor, that's all you have time to do. Like you're not always strategizing. You're having just conversations about life, about a lot of food. You know, it's like anything that you can talk about, just to let the time go away. Whereas here, you have your real life and you have the game while managing these people that you don't know and have only known for 39 days here, but you're not listening to them 24 hours a day. Unless you're talking to Lauren and Andrew, apparently, who don't sleep. But
and in the Real Survivor, you can like sit down at night and like go over the facts. Like you learned in the day, like, oh, you know, Jeremy plays the saxophone. Jeremy plays the saxophone.
I know Lauren, and I forgot the answer was 5'3" for her height. Like,
oh my gosh,
like you're not like it. That's not something that comes up in conversation where you're just like texting each other, like, oh, by the way, I'm 5'3". Oh yeah, yep, awesome. I will definitely remember that.
But again, like we have like our real lives going on, so I don't fault them too much.
Like some answers, it does seem like based off the people that they got wrong, you're like, you guys seem pretty close this season. I don't understand why you wouldn't get this right, but ultimately, first time winner,
Lilly.
Mike's chagrin. Lilly wins immunity, guaranteed her spot at final two, and a chance to plead her case in front of the jury. And ultimately, it is her decision to decide what's the best move for her to take out. Do I take out Mike or do I take out Alex? Ultimately, she decides to take out Mike. I like ultimately, even with that, knowing what the results end up being, I still believe it was the correct move for her to remove Mike from the situation.
Yeah. Mike Simmons is a very smooth talker, and so he could just easily just win people over.
He also has that smile too, where it's just like you want to just believe him, and it's just like what he says is goes. I was like, oh yeah, Mike Simmons is great, and I got him on a steal for the draft, and like he turned out to be one of my favorite players this season.
Well, the thing is, like, why it's even more of a correct move, it's just because with the basic jury, I'm not talking about this jury, but the typical jury. If you let someone like Mike go in and his first two talking points he's going to say, because he said he was going to talk about this stuff, was, I won 4 immunities and I've had 0 votes cast against me the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're showing 2 great strength. You're already showing that you rocked the physical portion of the game. Then showing that you have 0 votes cast against you is a combination of your strategic and your social game, because you were able to convince people to not vote for you.
Right.
So it's sort of like, if I'm looking at that, I have to vote him out because I'm like, I can't say I'm better than him in physical and he has less votes cast against me or him than myself. I can't argue against that. So what can I argue against?
Yeah, I mean, there's some positives and negatives to like being so immune. So like, yes, you won those challenges, but then also you didn't have to go through a lot of like maybe some of the strategic scrambling, because it's like, oh, I'm safe, I don't have to be at this call or something like that, where it's like you're not worried, oh, I'm the one going home. So there might be some things lacking in that area where
I feel like with Mike's specific situation, though, it wasn't like he was winning the entire way.
Right.
In the middle portion of post-merge, which is a very difficult spot to maneuver when you don't have immunity, he was vulnerable all 3 times and was managed to be vulnerable for when John, Lauren, and like John again, and Mackenzie and all of them, like all these heavy hitters are going out. When Greg goes out, he's vulnerable there too. So like, he was being saved and not even being considered for votes, and other people were taking the fall when he was actually I think in my mind and a lot of the viewers' minds, playing the better game.
Right.
Yeah, he was able to just lower his threat level when he needed to and just hide himself so easily that like just no one was really looking at him, because you had John and Lauren going at each other's throats. And then there was the Mackenzie and the Greg vote that just kind of happened because they needed to go.
And then somehow Zucker got like thrown under the bus. Poor guy.
Yeah, but ultimately we see Mike Simmons, Rob G. Otis of the season, coming in third. I will say, Mike, it was a pleasure. I said it to him during his final words, because I do the final words for the season. It was a pleasure having him on the season. It's someone who was basically a recruit and didn't know much about Survivor. He picked it up fast and he played it damn well. And I would say it was one of the more impressive games I have seen in org games so far.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely, all of a sudden, I'm friends with John and Lauren, so obviously I was rooting for them. But then I had like my person that I didn't know that I was really rooting for, and I'm like, damn, it's Simmons, like he is kicking ass, and I'm like, he's on my team and he's kicking ass. I'm like, let's go. So I would love to see him play again if he would ever want to, or we had another like all-star returnee season. I would definitely be pulling for him to be cast again, because I think he played one of the best games that we've had.
Yeah, we love you, Simmons.
Well, that gets us to final tribal council, where Alex and Lily get to plead their case. And ultimately, before we do any nitpicking here of what the difference makers were, I believe both of them overall had very good tribal council performances. Sure. Did they have faults? Yeah, a few. But like ultimately, I think the positives of both of their answering of the questions outweighed the negatives. And you could see that by the vote, because of just how there was only, outside of this vote, there was only one other time this season where there was actually a close vote, and that was when they went to rocks.
Right.
Like, so it was a very divided jury, but it was also because this jury didn't quite know which way they wanted to vote for. So it was definitely an open, very open tribal council. What were your like beginning thoughts as we were going through tribal council?
Well, I think votes were definitely swayed at tribal, like for sure. I think some people were going into it wanting to vote for someone, and then the person that they weren't intending on voting for like swayed their vote a different way. So I think anything can happen in final tribal. I guess my question to you guys is like, how do you weigh your overall, like what you've been doing for 39 days versus maybe how well you could just like, I guess, pitch it in the final tribal? Because like say Alex, we didn't outwardly see his game, but he like was here in final tribal, where in the regular game, Lilly was like this social butterfly who was doing really well, but maybe like missed on a couple questions in final tribal where hers wasn't as strong. Like, how do you guys weigh that?
I'd probably say you have to have a mix of both. I mean, you in the game, it's all about information, how much information that you have. And so then throughout the game, you're collecting all that information that we could use at the end. And then at the very end, you show your entire hand. I think that's kind of what Alex did, which we didn't really see a lot throughout the entire season, was he was in a lot of the votes. And then at the very end, he got to explain, yeah, this was my game and I made it happen. And that's why you guys are all sitting over there and I'm sitting here. So,
right. And Jeremy, of the three of us, you're the only one who's actually sat in a jury for a vote.
Thanks.
For you, sorry that you couldn't get to the end, McKenna. I'm sorry. So Jeremy, you as a jury member, because every jury member is different, but like because you have that perspective, maybe you could explain to us, like when you're sitting there and you're like listening to these people give their pitch for why they should win and be that title of sole survivor, like what are you looking for?
I'm definitely looking for what a person did throughout the game to get themselves to where they are now. I know that there's going to be lying and backstabbing and cheating, and so if that what makes your game the best, then you have to prove that to me. And it's basically just, this is how I got here, and this is how I'm better at the game than them and them, or if it's final two, just them. And so, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. But I know that kind of like what you were saying, Alex, like there's a whole lot of different types of jury people. I mean, you got people that are bitter, people who are just like, oh, I'm going to vote for this person because they were my friend in the game throughout the game, and I know them the most. And so you have to know your jury and how to pitch it in multiple different ways.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth, Jeremy, because I wanted you to plead like what you look for, because when you're sitting at final trial or you're like getting ready to be potentially one of the people sitting at final tribal, you need to be setting people out and also understanding who they are, not just as a person, but as a player. Because what they are as a player is also what they're most likely going to be as a jury member. And you need to understand what it is that they are looking for. Like, you have people like John, who he has talked to me offline about this. And it's like, if you basically just tell him off while he gives you a hard question and you respond and also tell him off, he'll have like more respect for you and be more willing to vote for you. So it's like, it's things like that where you're not normally going to be thinking like that, but you have to be in that headspace to understand and mold your answers to how these select 9 people want to hear. Unfortunately, with some of them, and I have my opinions on certain questions that were asked, I don't like questions where you stunt one of the people at final tribal and be like, you can't back up your reasoning, you can't do this, you can't do that, because they're the ones who are supposed to be explaining your game. By you as a jury member not allowing people to explain themselves, I don't like, because that's not helping anyone. It's just I feel a jury member stroking their ego. And I'm not calling any one of these people out because we had a few of them that had questions like that. And I can understand looking back why they wanted to do those questions. In my opinion, as a if I was sitting at Final Tribal, I probably would have told them to F themselves.
Yeah. It would be interesting to, because I've only been on like the production / host side of a final tribal council. So I've never had to be in that headspace of like, man, what do I ask them or what do I say? So like, does me telling off John kind of ruin my vote for someone like Andrew?
Mm-hmm.
Where Andrew is more of the kind of butter someone up. Like he had Lilly talk about him and Alex talk about Lauren. So like, I think you kind of have to kind of balance a lot of that too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. But like going through it, like we're not going to go point by point, but like who are some of the jury like their questions or whatever they did during their time were you guys like most intrigued during, and either with them or with the answers that Alex and Lilly were providing?
I think one of mine, you kind of already touched on this, Alex, was John's questions and like his statements at both Alex and Lilly. Like, yeah, like we know John outside of the game. But I remember sitting at that final tribal and I was just like, damn, he is just roasting them.
Yeah.
And like, I was wondering, I was like, I want to know how they're going to react because I know how I would react, but I'm wondering what they would do. And I think they came out pretty well back at John. And so I think Alex did extremely well at that question, being able to just phrase everything and just kind of throw it right back at John. But yeah.
I think my favorite question might be Michael Zucker's question of who do you think you have votes from? Like you definitely know you have a vote from at least one person. So just name that one person.
Right.
And I think that's where Lilly lost herself. The game was that one question of like Mackenzie outwardly said like pretty much, Alex, I'm voting for Lilly. Why should I not? In her question to the finalists.
Well,
so the fact that Lilly didn't say Mackenzie was just shocking.
Yes, and you know what, we can step into that and be more in the section of why Lilly potentially lost. We will never know for sure. This is just our chance to speculate why we think certain votes didn't go her way. And overall, I feel it was her inability to be able to just give a firm answer, and unfortunately with some of these questions be like give the firm answer and not give
the
feedback to it, saying you're going to get 0 votes. For starting with the Zucker vote or Zucker's question, I feel like there's different ways you can go about it, and it all depends on how you think the jury would react to it. Me, I always would just want to be funny with questions like that and be like, oh, I think I got 9 votes because I played this game hard. I played this, and you know what? I think all you guys want to vote for me. And it's just like, at that point, it's like sort of like a Tony-esque type of thing where you're just like, I did my game. It's out there, you know it, and like I don't need to speak on my game. Unfortunately, like Lilly and Alex were in a case where they needed to, so I would have said for her, give like a similar answer as Alex and be like, oh, I think I potentially have like 3 votes. I think I have Mackenzie's, Greg's, and Andrew's. Because I was with Andrew when he got blindsided and I was closer to him than Alex was. Greg, me and him were tight from the beginning, and Mackenzie and I did build a good relationship. While we didn't work with each other, we respected each other, and I would expect her to vote for me. Like that's
or just the potential. Like I think I might have 3 votes, but I know I have this one person's for sure. Like any of that could have, I think, would have greatly benefited her.
Right. And then you also have like the Lauren the bonus question thing of
Right.
who doesn't deserve it. Personally, again, I wouldn't have answered the question, or I would have given it right back to the person who gave me that question
Mm,
and be like, because I don't think this is a question that should happen at tribal
yeah.
council. But like I would spin it in a way where I'm respecting the jury, because I'm like, that's an insult to the rest of the people sitting here. You even asking that every single person who's here played the game and deserves the spot that they were able to get to. If not, they deserved to be better than where they placed. But they got here and they deserve to have a vote. So I'm going to pick you. And I think you get respect from some people there.
Hmm. Yeah, that I'm not a big fan of the negative questions of like, why is their game worse than yours? I like the twist kind of like each of them saying, you know, why is their game better than yours, and then they also answer it about you. I'd rather do like that kind of like positive
Mhm.
energy kind of question, because tribal councils can be really negative, and sometimes it's like really hard to watch really negative tribal councils where you have like the one outlier of like
Mhm.
a John, but you don't have like the finalists like bashing each other.
Right. And, but like with this, and Jeremy, you can tell me if I'm wrong here. It's like, I know with Lauren's question, she said, "Don't give me a feedback." So once Lauren gives or Lily gives some like little bit of feedback as she's showing the vote, like you have to just assume I already lost her vote. So in my mind, I'd be like, okay, then why don't I just talk over Lauren anyway, even though she's trying to interrupt me? Be like, nope, I'm going to talk over you right now, and be like, no, I get to give a response. This is my response, but that's more so why I would have just made Lauren my decision and not put someone like an Andrew or someone random.
Yeah, this portion of Final Tribal was a little bit tough to watch, because, and I think with Lily, she even kind of mentions like she's such an introvert, and so I know that she doesn't like, she's not one to just like backlash at someone, and so I think she was just like, okay, well, Lauren said I can't give feedback, and then I tried, she told me no, so I'm just gonna probably just stop talking now. But I can definitely say what you're saying, Alex. Like, if like, yeah, like if you're gonna get thrown stuff at you, like you need to be able to throw it back, because the jury's gonna see you back down and kind of cower a little bit, and we're like, that may be someone we might not want to vote for because they're not as confident as they have been the rest of the evening.
Yeah. And you know what? At the end of the day, I get to have the knowledge of seeing all this happen and also think about this constantly, be like, oh, well, how would I do this? How would I do that?
Right.
And so they are being put on the spot with this. So
Mm-hmm.
totally understandable. And really, you touch on, I think, what also cost Lily the game, unfortunately, is her it's not her insecurities, because I do not think she's an insecure person. It's just that she's introverted, so it's harder for her to actively like either praise herself or like really speak up and be more vocal or challenge Alex with what Alex is saying or trying to take credit for. Whereas Alex, he has that acting background, and if you're going to be an actor, like you could be introverted, but you're a good public speaker if you're going to go into acting. So that gives you more of that confidence. And I think Alex's confidence ultimately drove him to the win.
Well,
Mhm.
Lily has said in like confessionals, and I believe in the final tribal, where she was just like, kept saying, I don't deserve to be here more than the people I just voted out. And she would say that kind of after every vote. And that's kind of discouraging to go into a final tribal council with.
Right. But we are about to close out Final Tribal, and we do have Mike gets a chance to speak, and he's basically, you're seeing him there the entire time, just rejected and just stewing over the fact that he just lost this game that he thought was in his hands to win. And you know what? When you don't have time to process, it doesn't give you time to get over hurt feelings, because he says leaving, oh, this is Lily's to win. Sorry, Alex. But I think at this point he's sort of also thinking like, well, I'm still like, I'm still a little upset over this, and I don't. And at this point in his mind, I think he's thinking still, like, I don't think Alex is winning the game. So I'm going to just give him my vote. Like, I'm still like a little upset over what happened. It is what it is. Like, I respect both of you, but I'm going to give my vote to Alex. And you don't really see this as much. We then have like infighting amongst the jurors.
Yeah, well, especially in the not like open forum discussion kind of tribal council. This is strictly like the question and answer old form tribal council where this was rough.
Yeah, it was it was definitely, I think it caught everyone by surprise, even the host and production that were there. I think with Mackenzie's statement about Lilly taking out Simmons at the final challenge, Simmons, I think his wound was still so fresh that like I feel like it wasn't maybe the correct time for Mackenzie to say that. Because I think definitely whenever you're voted out, you go through like this process, like this grieving process, basically. And you can definitely see Simmons throughout the entire final tribal council. He's probably replaying a lot of stuff in his head. He's not sure why Lilly just kind of stabbed him in the back and did this. And so it was just a very tense moment at the very end. It was interesting.
And I think it wasn't mainly the would you have cut yourself at this point question. It was the wait, why can't I be upset right now? Like you were able to be upset. Why can't I be upset?
Yeah, she doesn't acknowledge his feelings and just goes like, oh, I wouldn't be upset. So you shouldn't be upset because I wouldn't be upset. Which goes into like, the idea of jury management. You also have to understand people's emotions and that their decision making and their reasoning and their thoughts and their feelings are not the same as yours. It's like snowflakes. We're all different.
Yeah.
We all handle things differently.
Yeah.
And that was just it wasn't the time or place to do it. But we go from that and we're going into the votes. And like I said, it was basically a split vote. It was a vote of 5-4. And we have our winner, and it's Alex.
Nobody saw this coming, and production didn't see it coming because all the jury members were messaging saying like, oh, like I think we're messaging production and stuff. Like I think I'm going Lilly. I think my head's with Lilly, and Alex turned out to be our winner. I think he proved his case in final tribal council, and I think he is a deserving winner for sure.
Absolutely. And Jeremy, I want to give you this point as well. The bounce off of what McKenna just said. A lot of times we watch Survivor and we feel, even no matter what you hear at final tribal council, you have this idea that like it really doesn't make a difference to a majority of the jury. Like that most of the jury goes in with an idea and they go in and vote with that same idea no matter what is said. This tribal council, I fully believe, shows, if not for the real game of Survivor, for these orgs, if you apply and you want to play in them, final tribal council matters.
Yeah, it does. Whatever you can say in there, it has to count. Because if there's at any point in the entire final tribal council you can sway someone's mind to vote your way, you have to take that risk. Yeah, my heart goes out to Lilly with the vote. I know how it feels. But it was, you can definitely see like a lot of people's minds were just going back and forth that entire final tribal council, and it was really interesting to see and really cool to watch.
Because I keep track of the votes, I know who voted for who. We got 4 votes for Lilly, and it's Austin, Greg, Mackenzie, and Andrew. The 5 votes for Alex is John, Lauren, Mike, Michael, and Jim. Any shockers there?
Jim. Because I figured Jim would go more along the lines of Lilly. And I think Lauren has also said, like, I'm not voting for Alex. Like, a bunch of people, I think, were like, Alex would never get my vote or something like that.
Mhm.
So a lot of the votes for Alex, I think, were shockers. And I think he pulled a lot of people over to his side for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
And I do say there is a common theme with some of the people who voted for Alex, more specifically with Zucker and with Lauren, who are both votes for Alex, are both questions where Lilly didn't quite exactly do what they wanted her to do for
Right.
their questions.
Yeah.
And
who knows?
That could be the difference maker.
Yeah.
We don't know what could have changed with Mike Simmons' vote if no disturbances happened during tribal. Like, we could be talking a reverse vote here. But that's the game of Survivor, people. And Alex is our first long game winner, our third winner of SGSN games.
And our first man.
First male winner. And also first person to win and not get either one vote or no votes cast against them. He had 6 votes cast against him for the season.
Yes.
So we're now wrapping this up. Before we truly wrap up, though, it's now finale episode MVPs. Let's figure out who the MVP of the season is.
Jeremy, I think we should start. Yeah.
Who was your MVP of the finale?
I gotta go with Alex, who is on my fantasy team. And so came out with the win on that one. He had a great final tribal council. He brought it out when he needed to bring home the W.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not give it to Alex for this win? I don't think there's any other way that you could squeak someone for a win. I mean, I could try and tie things up or whatever and do Lilly, but I think Alex got this win. He really showed his abilities here at this final tribal council.
Well, with that, I can now tell you the results of the MVPs of this season.
Who's the MSVP?
Well, in joint 5th place with 1 MVP each, we have Lauren, Andrew, John, Victoria, Mackenzie, and Michael Zucker. In 4th place, we have Lilly with 1.5 MVPs. In 3rd place, we have our winner, Alex, with 2 MVPs. And the winner of this MVP is separated by half an MVP.
I'm sorry.
So,
Jeremy!
the runner-up with 3.5 MVPs is Greg. Congratulations, Mike Simmons. You are the most valuable player of Exile Island with 4 MVPs. Congratulations, Mike Simmons. You may have not won the game, but you won MVP.
You won the recap MVP. How does that make you feel? Please comment.
But before I wrap up and give our plugs, McKenna and Jeremy, let's get your final thoughts on this season of the Survivor Game Show Network's Survivor Exile Island.
Jeremy, kick us off.
All right. It was definitely a season that did not disappoint. There were lots of twists and turns throughout the entire 39 days, and I think the Castaways were able to handle it really well, especially alongside the twist of Exile Island. They were really able to use that, I think, to its fullest potential with getting connections on the other side and finding advantages. I loved kind of like the butting heads with a lot of different people. And so got to see some good friends play the game. Overall, it was a great season.
Yeah, I thought this was a really great season, really great cast. And I tend to, while editing, feel like kind of like a burnout right around the mid-merge, because all of like the excitement of everything being new is kind of gone because that's in the beginning tribal phases. But with this season, I messaged Ian and Morgan. I'm like, I'm not feeling burnt out. I still want to like go in and edit these episodes because this cast is just really solid. And I'm looking forward to what Ian and Morgan can think up next, because if this season, our first long game season, was this good, it's only up from here.
Yeah. And I got to give huge kudos to Ian and Morgan. I know this was a project like a year in the making pretty much.
Yeah, last October.
Yeah. And so I think they put on an incredible game. So definitely huge congrats to them.
Yes. A big congratulations to Ian and Morgan as hosts. They did an amazing job as hosts and running a solid ship. Mm-hmm. It was a dream, I know, of both of theirs to be able to host a game like this. I'm glad we were able to make it a reality, and cast was spectacular across the board. Excellent characters, excellent game players. We had it all. We had entertainment, we had drama, we had gameplay. Mm-hmm. You really saw a true Survivor season, in my opinion, from this cast. Want to thank production. Obviously, we were all part of production. Denny, our exit interviews, and some of our unsung heroes like Carrie, who also helped with final words and helping with challenges. These games are not easy to run when you want to have high quality production value with them. And we just had high quality throughout the board between our hosts, our production, our challenges, and our castaways. So with that, I want to thank everyone. And the most important people I want to thank is you, the person listening to this right now, who has watched all the videos, who has watched every episode. We are nothing without our fans and our viewers who watch this. And we thank you time and time again. And we hope that you keep watching. And also, keep your eyes open, keep your ears perked. And I'm just going to say, you may want to watch the reunion on Thursday. Some stuff might be dropping that you may want to know, especially if you want more content. Maybe you want to play a game sometime. You're going to have to watch the reunion to learn more information on Thursday. But with that, it's time for my shameless plugs. And if you liked what you listened to and you watched this season of, please press that like button. Press subscribe and click that bell for all notifications so you know when new content's coming out. And let me tell you, a lot of new content's about to drop. Tomorrow, we will have our exit interview with our third place, Mike Simmons, with Morgan, Ian, and our exit interview queen, Denny. On Thursday, like I said, we will have our reunion show with all the castaways. And on Friday and Saturday, we will have our exit interviews with the runner-up, Lilly, and our winner of Exile Island, Alex. Make sure you follow us on our Instagram account. We had a very good Insta story from Ian and Austin's cousin, Derek, with their podcast, Thoughts from the Bench. Please follow them. Please follow that Insta story. It was very entertaining. And also, if you want to be more involved with our community, please join our Facebook game page at Survivor Game Show Network. We will accept you, and that's where you will be able to ask questions and be more involved and in the know when new stuff drops. And with that, this is myself, Jeremy and McKenna, signing off for Exile Island, but we will be back again. Good night, everyone.